Greg, we're out here. Oh yeah, sorry. Oops. There we go.
Yeah, so
I'll say, make sure these guys all got you in the shot.
we're ready. Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for being here in Oakville today. I want to welcome Minister Rod Phillips, Minister of the Environment, Conservation and Parks to my left, and Minister Greg Rickford from the Ministry of Energy, Northern Development and Mines. As you know, it's been 1 week since the federal carbon tax came into effect, raising gasoline prices and adding to the cost of natural gas bills. This is hurting Oakville seniors, workers, families, and small businesses, just as this is hurting all Ontarians. In fact, just as an example, the Halton Healthcare Services will see heating costs rise to over $600,000 in 2022 because of the increase in the carbon tax. That's why I'm pleased to be joined today by Minister Phillips and Rickford to talk about what our government is doing to make sure Ontarians really understand the impact of this federal tax grab. The federal government believes that a carbon tax is the only way to reduce carbon emissions and fight climate change, but we know this is not the case. As the minister responsible for the environment portfolio, Minister Phillips recently announced our Made in Ontario plan for the environment. That plan will reduce emissions and meet our share of the federal government's reduction targets without imposing any kind of carbon tax. To tell us more about that, it is my pleasure now to welcome Minister Phillips to the podium.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining us. And Stephen, thanks so much for welcoming us here. Stephen Crawford does a fantastic job of representing his constituents down at Queen's Park and here in Oakville, so it's great that you could take the time to be with us today. As Stephen mentioned, just 1 week ago, the federal government imposed its job-killing carbon tax on the families and the businesses in Ontario. Now, we know that the carbon tax is going to increase the cost of heating. We know that it's going to increase the cost of fueling up your car. We know it's going to increase the cost of bringing goods to market in Ontario. And we know that a carbon tax is going to have serious impacts on businesses in Ontario, businesses that need to compete with businesses across the border and around the world. In recent weeks, along with my caucus colleagues, I've been speaking to many Ontarians, families and businesses that are threatened by Justin Trudeau's carbon tax. I've spoken to students about the effect of the carbon tax on their colleges and universities. $24 million of additional expense for those colleges and universities just to pay Justin Trudeau's carbon tax. I've talked to farmers who've talked about the impact of the increased cost of fuel, both in producing the products that we all rely on to eat and also getting them to market. And they've, of course, admitted that that cost is going to get passed on to families. We've met with small business owners who lose sleep because they already are challenged in a competitive environment to meet their payroll, and this carbon tax is not going to make it easier. We've met with patients and the administrators of hospitals who talk about the impact of a carbon tax on our healthcare services. Stephen referenced the costs locally. Those costs will be $27 million in additional charges, a $27 million healthcare cut, compliments of Justin Trudeau as a result of his carbon tax. We've spoken with seniors living on a fixed income who worry about services and worry about additional costs to retirement homes who have to heat those homes. That's an additional $16 million as a result of the carbon tax. And we've talked to families across Ontario who are now paying 4.4 cents a litre more to fill up their tank, 7 cents a litre if they have a diesel vehicle, just because they have to drive to work or they have to take their kids to soccer. These are real costs for real Ontarians, and they're really an impact on their lifestyle. The federal government would have you believe that it is a requirement to have a carbon tax to fight climate change, and that is just not true. Our Made in Ontario Environment Plan demonstrates that you can fight climate change, that you can have a realistic, pragmatic approach to this important issue without imposing a job-killing, regressive carbon tax. Our plan, as Stephen mentioned, commits to cutting emissions by 30% by 2005. We're already 75% of the way to that target because of the work that was done by Ontarians and the work done by businesses. So this target of a 30% reduction by 2030 is a target that we can hit without a job-killing carbon tax. But let me be clear. In the meantime, while we roll out our Made in Ontario plan, which we're doing, we are also going to take every opportunity to make it clear that Justin Trudeau's carbon tax is unnecessary. It's a bad tax, it hurts families, it hurts businesses, and it's unnecessary. We will be in the courts next week, as has already been talked about, with our court appeal. The province of Saskatchewan has already taken its case to court, and we're waiting for the decisions on that. And just last week, the Premier of Manitoba added that Manitoba will also be taking the federal government to court. In addition to that, we have the provinces of New Brunswick, Alberta, and PEI, two of which I'll mention are not conservatively led governments, all of which oppose the federal government's climate plan. We will make sure that we use every tool at our disposal to make sure that Ontarians understand the impacts of this carbon tax, the impact on their businesses, the impacts on their families, and the impact on our province's competitiveness. And with that, and to be more clear about the next step we're going to take, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, the Minister of Northern Development, Energy and Mines, Mr. Greg Rickford. Greg?
Thanks, Rod. Thanks very much. Thank you, David. Thank you, Raja, for hosting us here this afternoon. I want to thank MPP Crawford for his great work here in Oakville, but as well in the legislature, and my learned friend, the Minister of Environment, Conservation and Parks, for the important work that we do together in many instances for the people of Ontario. As Minister Phillips had just mentioned, our government is committed to lowering energy costs for families, for seniors, and for businesses, small businesses and large job creators. That's why we canceled the Wynne government's cap and trade scheme, putting more money in the pockets of families, of businesses who often struggle to make ends meet or to turn a profit. And that's why, as the minister said, we'll continue to use every tool at our disposal to fight this job-killing, regressive carbon tax. Let me tell you exactly what the new federal carbon tax means for the average family in Ontario. If you're living in Northern Ontario, who use natural gas to heat our homes, and more of it, frankly, this winter, it means the new tax will cost an average of $94 more this year alone. And by 2020, this rises to more than $235. Those are important amounts of monies to family. They impact decisions around sports equipment, around music lessons, and all the other things that arise in the normal course of family life. For moms and dads, it means you're paying 4.4 cents per litre more for gas to fill up that minivan to take your kids to soccer practice, rising to more than 11 cents per litre 3 years down the road. Heating your house in the dead of winter isn't a luxury. Families shouldn't have to choose between heating and eating. Filling up your tank to get to work, driving the tractor on the farm, taking your kids to hockey shouldn't cost you more. Look who's been filling up behind us as this exercise has been going on. School buses, moving vans, dump trucks, small business vehicles. This is a tax on everything. Don't be confused about that. When a deck supply company is paying more for their gas, the deck is going to cost more, folks. This is a significant event, and we believe that transparency measures need to be done to show the true cost of this tax. The people of Ontario deserve to know the full truth about how the federal carbon tax will make their lives more unaffordable. This job-killing carbon tax will make everything more expensive, but it will hit our wallets hardest when it comes to gas prices and home heating costs and the businesses and programs and services that we use here in Ontario. We know that many customer groups who have participated in the OEB's proceeding on the now cancelled Wynne government's cap and trade scheme argued for a separate line item for the tax on the basis of greater transparency for the benefit of customers. And I would also note that this includes the Auditor General, who called for a separate line item on those bills. And as such, I've written the OEB urging it to add a clear line item that identifies the new federal carbon tax on natural gas bills. If they refuse, we will use every tool in our toolbox to make sure that Ontario families, that Ontario businesses, Ontario farmers know exactly what this unconstitutional cash grab is going to cost them every single month. We're also introducing a transparency measure specifically for gasoline. At every gas pump across Ontario, we are going to take steps to make sure drivers know exactly what the impact is on their wallets. This would take the form of a gasoline transparency sticker that will clearly identify this hidden federal tax. More details and timelines for the new pump stickers will be announced later this spring. But the message is clear. This is an unnecessary, job-killing, economy-killing tax, and our government will continue to hold the federal government accountable to the people of Ontario. We will continue to promote transparency for Ontario Energy customers because we believe, ladies and gentlemen, that every Ontario person, family and business who pays the bills every single month has the right to know exactly how much they're paying and what they're paying for. And that includes right here at the gas pump. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for this extraordinary opportunity. We believe this is the kind of transparency that Ontarians expected of us when they voted us into a majority government last June. It's a privilege and an honor to serve with my colleagues and bring these measures forward. I'm Greg Rickford, the Member of Provincial Parliament for the Great Kenora-Rainy River riding. It's a privilege and an honor to serve my constituents and you in my capacities as the Energy Minister. Thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah. Sure.
This is essentially a revenue neutral exercise. Do you not agree?
We don't, and neither do Ontarians. The idea that the government is taking money out of one pocket and putting it back in the other, or putting more back in the other, frankly is absurd to most of the people I talk to. It also makes no sense in the context of why they say they're having a carbon tax. The point of a carbon tax is to motivate behavior by making something more expensive. So this would be the equivalent of increasing the price on cigarettes because we want to stop you from smoking, but cutting them a check at the end of the year so they could buy more cigs. It doesn't make sense. So we don't believe that's going to be the case. It hasn't been the case in other jurisdictions. We know from the Financial Accountability Officer that the charge in 2022 will be $648 on average per family. For families in Oakville, for families in Ajax, for families in Kenora that tend to drive a bit more, they're going to be on the other side of that average. So $700, $800, $900. So no, we don't have confidence in the federal government when it comes to their math.
If I could just add to that, the federal government has conveniently used specific examples and how that might on balance bring money back into their pocket. But as we've pointed out earlier here today, it isn't just about the carbon tax on a specific item that they're paying for. It's the carbon tax that's being added onto the businesses and programs and services. When Lakehead University in Thunder Bay or Confederation College has to dispatch its programs or services to Kenora, that's going to cost more. Think of high schools who send their students across province for some kind of pan-provincial sporting event in those school buses. That's going to cost more. So we believe that for people outside of the average category that the analysis has been performed on, folks that buy airline tickets as a regular part of their job are going to pay more for those airline tickets. That's a cost we don't believe that the federal government's accounted for, and it goes way beyond the postcard they sent that said they'll be getting $307 back. It's nonsense.
Is there a cost to this program? If so, what is it?
Thank you. And we'll be bringing this on, and there's a minimal cost attached to it, but we think that this is an important measure. It's one that's been voluntarily done by gas chains in the past, but we know that moving forward, the message is as important as a very minimal cost that we'll be in a position to understand precisely how much in the not too distant future. It's very small.
Thanks, everybody.
Good job. Thank you. Good job, David.
Thanks for coming over. Thank you.